Hi, I'm John, and I'm a level 1 chef.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle, and I'm a level 2 chef.
Hi, I'm Danielle Alex, and I've been a professional chef for 15 years and creator of Diversity Kitchen.
So today I'm going to be making a very simple fruit tart, and it's filled with great berries.
So this tart recipe is a tribute to being from Philly area. There's such a thing called tomato pie.
So an interesting fact about my tart, this tart uses orange blossom water, which is very different from your typical tart, but has great flavor.
I'm going to make my tart crust.
I know what you're thinking. You're a level 2, Gab. Don't you have to make everything from scratch? And the answer is no.
I don't like to overcomplicate things.
Sometimes I just don't want to be in my kitchen making dough all day long, and that's okay.
It's super easy. You don't have to put it in plastic wrap. You don't have to refrigerate it for hours and roll it out. I don't want to spend hours in the kitchen.
So we're actually going to be using a pre-frozen puff pastry, and we're going to jazz it up so that it is level 2 worthy.
So I'm going to start off first by making my dough. Now that requires making the barrage first. The barrage is the large pat of butter that I'm going to put inside of my dough. So I'm going to take my butter, I'm going to throw it into my mixer, add some flour. I always start on low speed.
I want to just work out all of the kinks that are in this puff pastry.
It's nice and smooth. I'm going to create a square with the butter and chill it.
This looks pretty good to me. I am going to poke some holes in it with a fork just to kind of alleviate some of the I actually don't know why I poke it with a fork.
Now that our barrage is in the refrigerator chilling, we're gonna make our dough, or also known as the de trompe.
So first up, we're gonna put our dry ingredients right in this bowl.
Flour here. So I've got my flour in our mixer. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar.
And just a pinch of salt. And now for our wet ingredients.
A cup of cold water.
Oh, just stick in a quarter of melted butter, along with a pinch of almond extract.
And now I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice. The lemon juice or acid in here adds to the flakiness and tenderness of the dough.
And then with a fork, I'm just gonna work it together.
I'm gonna mix it up first, and then I'm gonna add more butter. Yeah, you're right, more butter.
So that looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna go ahead now and transfer my pre-frozen puff pastry. Darf.
What is his name?
It's Lord Dario Naharis, but I call him Darf.
And I'm gonna just simply add my butter. You'll always wanna use soft butter. You use cold butter, you're gonna have chunks in there. I'm gonna turn this on for about, I'd say a 4 minutes or so. You're gonna see that it's going to form a nice solid dough mass. Or you're gonna see that it's gonna form a nice ball.
So right now I'm going to elevate this otherwise very simple puff pastry into something that's a little bit more grandeur, that's a little bit more of like a party stopper, if you will.
Now for the last step, I am gonna put my hands in there. I just wanna make sure everything's fully incorporated, and I'll show you.
It's one solid ball. Now I have to let this rest and chill in the refrigerator. So this and our barrage, our butter, are the same temperature when we go to put it together.
We're going to be using the remaining puff pastry to create a braid that will then border the outside edge of the puff pastry.
So we've got our chilled dough here, and you have to make sure you're working on a nicely floured surface.
So we're gonna do the same thing that we did with the other piece of puff pastry, where we're gonna roll it out a little bit.
Kind of do this rectangle shape.
So I'm going to cut 3 strips about a 1/2 inch in diameter, and then I'm going to braid them together. Looks pretty good.
Now that I have my butter in the middle, I'm gonna take one end and I'm gonna fold it over, and then I'm gonna take the other end and fold it over. This butter is like nicely tucked in bed, right? We don't want any of this butter squeezing out.
So I have my 4 braids now. Time to put these onto my tart base.
We are going to roll this out flat. If this butter is getting too soft, if the dough is becoming like super malleable, definitely put it in the refrigerator for a minute so that it can kind of firm up. Brush off any excess flour. You know, you just want to make sure that it's wrapped nice and tight so it doesn't create any kind of crust. That also messes with the flakiness of the dough. And then there it is, our first turn of our puff pastry dough, and we're gonna place this in the refrigerator to chill for at least 2 hours until it's nice and firm.
All right, braid number 1 going on my first border. I'm pressing the edges. Anything that's kind of excessive, I'm folding over, I'm tucking.
So now this is my last turn, and I'm going to prep it for our pastry shell. Since I'm not using all of this, I'm gonna cut my piece, roll it out to the desired thickness for my tart shell.
So as you can see, I have a tart pan here. So I'm gonna take my hunk of dough, and I do wanna go right up to the edges of the tart pan.
And a nice technique that I like to use is I take my rolling pin. I wanna move quickly because I don't want our layers to get ruined and all this to kind of just slump as it cooks.
I'm gonna go ahead and use a fork just to prick all over. And the reason why we do pricks is just it allows the heat to flow through it nicely. It's gonna get evenly distributed.
Take my rolling pin, take this off, and put it into the freezer as quickly as possible to chill it back down.
Now let's put this in the oven and bake it off.
Now we have the base for our puff pastry.
So there you have it. And into the freezer it goes while we prepare our filling.
So the first thing to do is we're gonna beat our whipped cream. And I just have some beautiful heavy cream here. And if you've ever made whipped cream before, it's super simple.
Since this is our pistachio tart, I'm gonna place my pistachios, my sugar, and I'm gonna place a very interesting ingredient, bread, right? And I like to use pain de mie, which is pretty much a basic white bread. I make sure I remove all the crust.
And it's gonna take a few minutes, but you just work it around. All right. And there we have whipped cream.
So now it's time to make my pesto sauce base layer for this heirloom tomato tart. I want a pretty good amount of the oil that the tomatoes are preserved in, as well as like a decent amount of the tomatoes themselves. You know, I saw somewhere that someone said that sun-dried tomatoes weren't cool anymore. We're gonna use them, even if they are out of style.
Here we have our pistachio, sugar, and flour in here, and it's nice, you know, it's kind of like a coarse sand. And I'm gonna add my butter, and then I'm gonna add my orange blossom water. So I'm gonna measure out about a tablespoon. Of course, if you love the flavor, feel free to add a little more.
So for my tart filling, I'm doing a mix of 2 soft cheeses. It's perfect for dessert, so I really like to use a blend of cream cheese and mascarpone cheese.
A little honey, garlic, 2 cloves, peel them, throw them in. So I have just kind of a nice little handful of basil. I'm gonna throw that straight in. And then last but not least, I'm just going to put a little bit of salt in.
Just gonna do half a brick of packed cream cheese. And now I'm just gonna beat these together until they're nice and smooth.
It's quite blended, but everything is more or less kind of chopped finely, and so it's good to go as a spread.
So these two are really nice and mixed.
Now if you look at it here, you have it, it's nice and smooth.
I'm gonna add the rest of my ingredients. So here I have half a cup of confectionery sugar. That's gonna really sweeten this up.
As you can tell, this is not a tart for the calorie counters, but when I tell you it's worth it and it's delicious, it is.
So now for the most important part of this recipe, the heirloom tomatoes. Oh my gosh, they're so pretty. I love them. I love them all, but we're gonna eat them.
I'm gonna do the juice of half a lemon. I know lemon a little weird, but this is a tart, so this will add a little tartness. I wonder if that's where the word tart came from. I don't know, but maybe.
You know, a nice thick slice. So whatever that feels like to you.
And then we're just gonna add a little bit of almond extract, and I think it complements our crust nicely. And then we're just gonna beat it so that there's no lumps at all, and everything is combined.
Tomatoes are a fruit. We do know that. We have confirmed that. That is one of those things that I remember when you learn as a kid, you're like, tomato is not a fruit. I still don't know why tomato is a fruit and not a vegetable.
This is looking great. I think this is ready for our whipped cream.
Our shell is nice and hard. I'm gonna take my filling and place it right here in the dough.
So I'm gonna take my sun-dried tomato pesto spread, and I'm gonna quite literally just spread it all over the base of this puff pastry.
Alrighty, so look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Here we have our filling and our tart dough. And now I'm just gonna place it in the freezer for a few minutes just to chill it down.
The last step with the filling is just to fold in our whipped cream. Got my pink spatula, which you know I love.
So I have my tomatoes. So now I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of start to piece this together and be a little bit artistic.
It's all incorporated, no lumps.
It looks like a beautiful little puzzle piece. Yeah, it's time to go into the oven.
It's always best to preheat my oven first. A unique thing I do with this is I make sure I get a pizza stone. So I'm gonna place this on the lower third rack of my oven. Now that everything's chilled, I place it on a cookie sheet, and this cookie sheet will go directly onto our pizza stone.
So I'm going to pop this tart into the oven for about 18 minutes at 400 degrees, and we'll be able to watch the puff pastry rise.
My tart has been in the oven for about 20-25 minutes. This is looking great. It's a nice golden color.
All right, here's our beautiful tart. It's been in the oven for 45 minutes at 375 degrees.
So I think the word that comes to mind when I look at this is like rustic. And the only way to make that even better and to enhance it is to go ahead and add my final touches and my final toppings.
Now for our toppings. We're gonna make a whipped creme fraiche. I'm gonna take my creme fraiche and place it in a bowl, and then I'm gonna give it a nice little whipping. So creme fraiche is kind of like, you could call it like the French version of sour cream. You can keep it cold in the refrigerator or just set it aside, but I'm ready for a slice, so I'm gonna put this aside and grab our tart.
So now I'm gonna take my filling and spread it all over our beautiful pie crust.
So first things first, I'm just gonna go right in with my thyme. I'm not chopping anything, it's just fresh thyme. And that's it for thyme. We have plenty of thyme, but we don't need that much thyme. Thyme jokes, they never get old.
So now for my favorite part, the fruit. I'm a designer by trade. No, I'm not. I'm a creative at heart, so I like to get fun with the design. There's a lot of art to baked goods.
I don't want the focus of this tart to be the cheese. This isn't a pizza, but I wanted to add a little bit of the saltiness and some of that sourness that comes from the Pecorino Romano. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a really light dusting.
For the next concentric circle, blackberries. I'm just realizing it's a little red, white, and blue. I did not plan for the Americana. Now, next big is my raspberries. This is gonna be another ring of red.
Some red chili flakes for just a little bit of a kick.
And then last but not least, our blueberries, which I got a lot of them. There's more to eat.
My olive oil, just to really bring it all home.
Now that I have my berries fully arranged on my tart, the next and last step is just to add a simple glaze. I just use a very simple apricot preserves. We're just gonna go ahead with our pastry brush.
And my honey, a really nice local honey, especially in the summertime.
Brush the fruit with a little bit of glaze. And now it really feels like we're painting, so if this isn't more of an art project, I don't know what is.
And last, but truly not least, my basil. So I'm going to introduce you to my basil gnome. He's really picky, but I like to ask him just for permission. So basil gnome, are we good? We're good. So I'm going to just rip these in half and sprinkle them over.
And here's my fruit tart.
And this is my heirloom tomato tart.
And here you have it, my pistachio orange blossom tart. Now time for the best part, the eating.
All right, here we go, nice big bite.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It came out exactly as I wanted. The filling really, for me, is the best part. I mean, I love my berries, but the filling is just so light. I think this is a job well done.
I'm not saying it's like pizza, but I would take this any day over pizza. There's like a sweetness that comes from the honey, but it doesn't taste like honey. If you want to be the most popular person at a summer party, you should probably make this.
Honestly, this turned out perfect. I'd say making my own dough is definitely worth the work. When you really master that flaky crust, there's nothing like it. And if you love pistachios, this is definitely your tart.
The most distinctive elements of a tart are its shell and filling. Let's take a look at the key differences between each of our chef's tarts. John made a simple and relatively quick tart shell. John used butter, which is flavorful and makes a tender crust for his tart. Butter is a water and oil emulsion, which means it's got tiny pockets of water dispersed in fat. In fact, most butters are between 15 and 20% water. Gabrielle used commercial store-bought puff pastry for her tart shell. There's usually no butter in the frozen puff pastry that you buy in the grocery store. Instead, they use tropical oils like palm kernel oil or hydrogenated soy or cottonseed oils. These types of fats have the advantage of being more flexible and formable than butter. However, they don't have the flavor or browning qualities that butter brings. Danielle made a traditional laminated puff pastry. Pastry lamination means that butter and dough are formed by a process of rolling, folding, and turning. Her first step was to make a barrage. She mixed a small amount of flour and lots of softened butter together and then chilled it. When it's very cold, butter can actually fracture and crumble. To prevent this, Danielle added some flour in this step which made the butter more elastic when it's very cold, which is essential when it comes to baking puff pastry. Next, Danielle made the dough trempe, which is combining flour, water, a bit of sugar to assist with browning, and salt. Danielle also added some lemon juice to her dough trempe. The acid allows the small amount of gluten developed to become more flexible and stretchy. She placed the barrage onto the dough trempe, took the two short ends of the rectangle that she made and brought them together to meet in the middle. She then rolled it with a tapered rolling pin and then made a trifold. This is considered to be one turn.
You have to kind of repeat this process for about 2 to 3 times. And sometimes you do it and you let it rest for 2 hours or longer, and then you lose track. How many times have I done this, right? Take a finger, lightly press right there. And that shows you I've done this once. Or you just wrap it in plastic wrap and you put a note on there. 1, 2, 3, 4.
She did 3 turns total, which makes many layers of cold dough and cold butter, making this ultra flaky once it's baked. John whipped heavy cream. He also whipped mascarpone cheese with cream cheese. Mascarpone is a soft, spreadable, unripened cheese made by thermal acidic coagulation of dairy cream. Gabrielle made a savory tart that started with a filling of blended sun-dried tomatoes. Sun-drying is a slow method of dehydrating tomatoes, which allows flavors to concentrate and retains volatile flavor compounds. The result is a shiny, deep red, rich, slightly tangy tomato with 12 to 24% moisture reduction. Danielle made a pistachio filling. Pistachios are high in protein and sugar compared to other nuts, so they're naturally sweet. They get their beautiful green color from chlorophyll. The bread is a neutral filler that takes up more volume while making the filling less dense.
The bread actually acts as a binder.
Orange blossom water has a fruity and floral flavor. It's been used in confections and pastries in Northern Africa, the Middle East, and Spain since the 6th century. Notice she only added a tablespoon because a little goes a long way. John pre-baked his simple and delicious tart crust. When you blind bake, which means you bake a crust that is not filled, it's important to take a fork and prick the bottom so that the steam can escape and you won't end up with an overly blistered crust. Gabrielle waited to bake her tart until it was filled. Danielle made sure that her filled tart was very cold prior to baking at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. When it was baked, steam formed from the butter melting and starches gelatinized. When the butter melted, it left some space where water evaporated and flakes formed from the layering. Next time you're in the mood to make a tart, remember you can go sweet, savory, simple, or sophisticated. We hope you'll use some of the tips from our 3 great chefs.